Hi, and welcome back to the channel. This is Andrew with Intercultural Solutions, and today we're going to talk about intercultural communication. So we'll start off by talking about what is intercultural communication. So this is when you communicate with two or more parties and they are from different cultures or they have a language difference. Um, and this becomes a relevant factor in the interaction, meaning it's making it more complicated to communicate with this person because of their language or because they're from a different culture, right? So we're going to look at three different aspects today. We're going to look at key components of intercultural communication. We're going to look at why intercultural communication matters and elements to consider about intercultural communication. Let's start with some key components. First is cultural awareness. So you should recognize and appreciate the unique perspectives, the beliefs, and behaviors that define different cultures. Um, if you are going to be going to a different country or a different place, we should research before we go. Make sure you understand what to expect from that culture. When you get there, be vigilant, meaning pay attention to what other people are doing and saying and how they're doing it and saying it. This can be a really, really big thing. A lot of people don't realize that people in that culture will give you cues as to how to act in their culture. And also, don't be afraid to ask. Ask people about their culture. Ask them why they do certain things. The worst thing that they'll do is say, oh, well, we don't really talk about that. Okay. But 99% of the time, they're going to tell you why they're doing what they're doing. Okay. So make sure you ask. Okay. We need to talk about language skills as well. If you are going to be moving to another country, it is important to learn some of the language. Um, Proficiency in both verbal and nonverbal communication is pretty important for clear communication. Um, what this does is it allows us to exchange information and convey our emotions, and also having even a little knowledge of the other person's language goes a long way. So even if you only know a little bit, for example, you know how to say hello, how are you, and you know how to respond to that. Maybe you can even ask where the bathroom is. Very, very simple things. It goes a long way because it shows that you are trying to understand them. You're trying to understand their culture. So you're putting forth effort. And it really does go a long way with most people. The next key component is about customs and norms. We should understand the social rules, etiquette, and traditions that influence how people interact and communicate. Um, this helps others trust you and it allows you to empathize with others. So, um, when you are interacting with someone from a different culture, understanding how they act in public versus private, how they act at work versus other social interactions, what kind of etiquette they expect from people. For example, do you shake hands? Do you bow? Do you hug when you meet somebody? That becomes very important. And then traditions. What kind of traditions influence how they interact with each other? Um, Trying to understand these things, and that's where the research comes in as well, will help you to empathize with them, to understand them, but it also helps them trust you like you would trust them if they did the same to you. So, this is an important skill. Next is thought patterns. So, we're gaining insight into the different ways people from various cultures think and perceive the world. Now, this will influence how others express themselves, and it influences how others receive information. So, for example, if you're two people from two different cultures, you're going to express yourselves in different ways. People in Western culture are usually a bit more direct with how they talk to people, whereas people from Eastern cultures, such as Japan or China, are much more indirect in how they talk to people. So you express yourselves differently, but also that influences how you receive the information. So if you're used to being direct and you're used to people being direct with you, you are going to expect that from other people. And when someone is indirect with you, you might get a little offended or you might not like the way that they're communicating, and vice versa. If you're used to being indirect and others being indirect, when someone's direct with you, it can be a little off putting. And people from cultures that are indirect, like Japan or China, uh, tend to not like very frank people. So we have to understand where they're coming from and try to adapt a little bit. And again, this goes back to trust and understanding and empathy. All right. Our final key component here is adaptability. And it all comes down to this: the ability to adjust your communication style to be appropriate for individuals from different cultural backgrounds. So, changing how you say something is just as important as what you say. Okay. Or adapting to your counterpart allows for more free flow of information. Okay. So, for example, going back to the direct versus indirect communication style, if you are very direct on a normal basis and you're talking to someone who is used to people being indirect, if you change how you say something, you don't have to change what you are saying. The content remains the same. It's just how you word that content. So you might want to use more of a passive voice when you're talking to someone from Japan rather than something more active. And if you adapt to your counterpart, they're going to be more willing to give you information and share with you what they're doing. And this is especially important if you are negotiating. It really does help in negotiations. It goes a long way. Okay, so we talked about some key components. Let's talk about why this matters so much. Like, why do we need to learn these things? Um, it's a globalized world. In an increasingly interconnected world, interactions between people from diverse cultures are commonplace in business, in education, and in social settings. So we're seeing in today's world so many companies that are doing business in so many countries that you have coworkers and colleagues that you interact with regularly. You might have colleagues in other countries. Like, let's say you worked for a company like Google. Google has offices literally all over the world. And you might have to interact with someone in one of those offices at some point, and you want to be able to communicate with them without offending them, especially if you're working for the same company. Um, but also, if you are maybe negotiating, maybe it's a supplier that you are trying to negotiate with, and being able to understand their culture is going to help in that negotiation. Okay, we're globalized now. There are companies doing, even small companies doing business all over the world. So it's super important that we um, learn intercultural communication. Okay, the next point is that we're looking at effective relationships. It helps to bridge those cultural gaps, fostering mutual respect and building successful relationships. Again, going back to, if you have a coworker, a colleague that's in another country or from another country, um, you want to be able to build a good relationship with that person, right? Especially if you're going to be working with them on a regular basis. It is imperative that we have good relationships with people in our company. You never know when that person is going to have some sort of influence on your career or something you do in the future. So build good relationships. For overall business success, for organizations, culturally competent professionals who can navigate different cultures are highly valuable. If you are a business owner, you want to have individuals working for you that understand different cultures and how to communicate with different cultures. This becomes a very, very valuable person within your organization. If they are able to get along well, especially with a client, if you have a client in a different country and you have employees that understand that culture and can communicate effectively with those people, then that is a very valuable asset to your company, right? And as an individual, if you have that skill, you become valuable to companies and businesses. And you can sell that skill when you're looking for a job or when you are trying to get a promotion. So it's a highly, highly sought after skill in the professional world. Okay. And then we're preventing miscommunication. I mean, this is kind of the kind of aha, yeah, duh kind of moment. It prevents miscommunication. Awareness of cultural nuances helps prevent misinterpretations and communication conflicts. Meaning, if you understand a language without culture, that's where the nuance comes from. You might still misinterpret what they're saying. For example, if you're trying to read an email from someone that's from a different country, let's say they're from Brazil, so they send you an email and they sent you an email in Portuguese and you translate it and you're trying to write back and you're going to try and send them something in Portuguese. Well, if you go to Google Translate and try to translate directly what you're trying to communicate to them without putting in the cultural factors, then you're going to send them an email that's probably not going to make sense. It's going to be misinterpreted or miscommunicated in one way, shape, or another. So understanding not only language but culture is super important when you're communicating. All right, what kind of elements do we need to consider? We need to consider high and low context cultures. So, understanding how much communication relies on explicit verbal messages versus implicit or contextual clues. We talked a little bit about this earlier, being direct versus indirect is part of this. Some cultures are high with context. They like to give lots of detail. They like to tell you pretty explicitly what they want or what they are trying to communicate. Okay. Other cultures are low context cultures. They are much more indirect. They are implicit, and they will give you a um, they'll give you a riddle for their communication. Uh, they'll tell you something, but it's implied what you're supposed to do. Um, for for example, maybe someone says, "Hey, um, your presentation was was pretty good today." Um, that's pretty direct communication, right? They're telling you exactly how they feel. But if they were being a little less direct, um, they might say, "Hey, I like what you did in this presentation," or your visuals in your presentation were quite good. Um, so it's a little less direct. So we have to understand how people communicate, whether they're from a high or low context culture. That's going to help a lot. One aspect that a lot of people talk about is nonverbal communication, and for good reason. Nonverbal communication is ooh, probably, I don't know, 70% of what you're trying to communicate. Um, Differences in gestures, facial expressions, and personal space can significantly impact communication. Something that we don't really get too much of when we're doing video conferencing. You can get facial expressions, but as far as gestures or personal space, we don't have those to work with. But if you are in the same room, the way that a person moves their body as they're talking, their hand motions, facial expressions, but not only that, personal space. Um, in the US, a lot of people talk about their personal bubble, right? Basically, a personal bubble in the US is if I can reach out and touch you, you're too close to me, right? But in other cultures, it's not like that. China, for example, there's so many people in China, and they've gotten so used to being packed into small spaces that they don't mind being super close to each other. So um, I've noticed that people will get very, very close to you when they talk, and it's not being rude or they're not, trying to get in your face. They are just so used to being close to each other that they naturally get close to you when they talk. So this is something to consider when you're dealing with other cultures. Are they used to your type of personal space, or are they used to something different? Okay. Social and personal values. So beliefs about family, about hierarchy, directness, and individualism, they vary across cultures and they influence your communication. For example, hierarchy. When you're at work with any company, um, depending on which culture you're in, hierarchy plays a very big role in communication. Um, I live in Taiwan, and working in Taiwan, one thing that becomes very clear is they are very serious about hierarchy. You do not go above your boss. Okay. You go one level above, that's as far as you're allowed to go. So, for example, if I want something done, let's say I need um, I want to order some material for a project that I'm working on. I need to go to my direct boss. And then my boss will go to whoever they need to go to ask for that material. And if they need to go to somebody else, they'll go to somebody else. So it works in a chain. So things take a little while to get done here in Taiwan, but that is their preferred way to do it. They like to use the chain of hierarchy. So if I were to go directly to the person in charge of purchasing materials, and not go to my boss, that person who I went to will go back to my boss and say, "Hey, why is this person coming to talk to me directly?" And they'll get upset and they'll come and talk to you, and it becomes a big mess. So, understanding hierarchy and understanding what you need to do in certain cultures can really affect communication, and it can affect your relationship with certain people. So, understanding, family values, hierarchy, directness, and whether or not they're very individualistic, um, all of these factors influence your communication, how you should be communicating with them. Okay. Okay. So this is just a quick introduction to intercultural communication. Uh, and again, we're talking about, key concepts, we're talking about, why it matters and certain elements you should consider. So understand that other cultures are not like yours. You should be open to multiple perspectives. Okay. Not everybody is the same. And it's not just different countries, but maybe even different areas of your country. The United States, for example, is huge. People from Florida are not the same as people from New York or Texas or California. And the way things are done is a little different. The way people talk is a little different. So communication is not the same everywhere you go, and you need to be open to different perspectives. Also, a globalized workforce means increased interactions with people from other cultures. Okay, you are more than likely going to have to deal with someone from a different country and a different culture at some point in your career. So make sure that you understand what you need to do, how you need to talk to them, how you need to communicate. And all this leads to this final statement: your job may depend on it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point in your career, your job may depend on how well you communicate with someone from another culture. Your boss might be someone from a different country at some point in time. So, understanding intercultural communication is a very important aspect of work life nowadays. So, try to study up on it and try to research different cultures that you need to interact with. Okay. All right. That's going to do it for today. Remember, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. We will have videos coming out every week. So thanks for watching if you made it all the way through. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.